Welcome, everybody. Good to see you today. We're glad that you're here. And if you're online, which I was just saying hi to everybody in the chat before I came out here, we're glad that you're here as well. If this is your first time here in the room, or maybe even second or third time, if you've never gone to our Start Here desk in the lobby, we invite you to go check them out, to talk to a few people there. It's a great first step to kind of get more information about our church. And one thing that you'll hear right about is our lunch with the leaders, which is happening today. We do this once a month for people to come to continue to offer this as an invitation for you to come and hear a little bit more about our church, what makes us unique. And this is a chance for you to get to know some of our other leaders here at Discovery as well, not just myself. But we have lunch provided today, right after this service. If you want to come, even if you have not RSVP'd, just stop on in. If you've never been to lunch with the leaders, come on in. If you have young children, we take care of their lunch as well, and childcare, so that you can focus. We'd love for you to come and to spend some time with us at that time. But if you can't, come next month, because we'll do it again. Also, about 7 years ago, my family and I moved to Pittsburgh area to help lead this church. And I didn't know anybody here. And one thing that was right around the corner on the calendar here at church was Man Camp. And it was a great opportunity for me to connect with like 40 other guys here at the church, get to hang around the fire pit, play games, have great conversations. And a lot of the people I call friends were at that Man Camp. And I don't know what it is about guys, but once you leave high school and once you leave college, it's hard to kind of really meet and have really good friends. And Man Camp's a great place where you can find your people. All right, it's one of the things that we're about here at Discovery, is helping you find your people. So Man Camp is the weekend right after Easter. And ladies, if you've got a man in your life, you should invite them, help them to get their signed up. I was talking to a lady in the lobby this after her first service. She goes, I got my husband signed up, and he was excited about it. But he was really kind of like, kind of stubborn. I don't know if I want to do this. I'm kind of committing, to get an overnight thing. And he signed up, he's excited about it, and it's going to be a great opportunity for him. It'll be a great opportunity for you as well. So sign up today, get that thing done, and be a part of that great experience coming up and just around the corner. Question, what do these names have in common? Elvis Presley, Marilyn Monroe, Princess Di, Kurt Cobain, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Terry Bradshaw, Matthew Perry, and Robin Williams. All of them were wildly successful, yet experienced deep depression. Like, how does that even happen, right? You might even think, like, someone who is that good at their craft, so popular, so successful, so wealthy, how could they have so much mental stress? Well, I think just because you're successful doesn't mean that you have significance. There's a guy by the name of Clay Cockrell, who I was reading about this week, he grew up in a small town in Kentucky. His father, who made a living salvaging auto parts, so he definitely didn't come from means. This guy Clay is now a therapist for the super rich, the ultra high net worth individuals who have set up a practice in Manhattan. And here's what he had to say about his clientele. He said, I had operated under the fallacy that money is going to solve all your problems. And I was shocked to find out that not only does it not solve your problems, it causes a lot of problems. It also makes things more extreme. It turns up the volume. Now, I don't know what rock Clay was living under, because he could have learned from the ancient wisdom that said, mo money, mo problems, right? But what he learned here is that the uber rich have some very consistent and specific problems. Part of their problem is that they have a mistrust of everyone, because they don't know, does this person just like me for me, or do they like me because of what I have? Which that then leads to another problem that they have, and that is isolation. So they start to build up fences and walls to protect themselves. And then that isolation then leads to another problem, which is you lose your significance. Because significance is something you don't build with a career. It's about building relationships. And what we find is that people who are trying to go for success, they use people to build their career. You know people like that? Like they're going so focused after their success, they don't care who gets in their way. They're going to bulldoze them. But when people go after significance, you use your career to build people. And so if you isolate yourself from people, you're going to lose significance. And this isn't a rich problem. This is a people problem. And this is something that God has had to teach me through my life as well. Because I'm a driven person. I've done all the tests. You know, I'm on the DISC test, I'm a high D, right? Type A personality in all kind of ways. I am driven. And being a pastor and a church leader, I felt God called me to this when I was a teenager, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. It could be a humbling thing. Like, God, what, me? Like, you want to use me? That could be one way people respond to that. Or it can lead to some pretty nasty narcissism. If you look at it from the other angle of God is choosing you to do this when he didn't choose you, I must be super special. And I can't tell you how many church leaders who I know who have come to a very unhealthy place where they think that the church begins and ends with them. And don't you dare question my judgment because I am God's chosen. And this is especially true with pastors who start churches. And they start a church because what happens if it starts to grow and become successful, they're like, I'm the one who started this. It wasn't here before me. And now look at where it's at. As I'm here, I must be incredibly used by God, and I start to think of myself as higher than I should be. And so they isolate themselves from other godly leaders who hold them accountable. And I just want to make sure this is a good opportunity for you to remind you about some very important people here at Discovery. It's a team that we call the lead team. And some churches call it eldership or elders. We call it the lead team here. And our lead team is made up of people just like you, meaning they are not on staff here at Discovery. They love Jesus. They love our community. They are people of significance. They might be successful in their jobs, but they are people of significance who use their position to build others up. And we see that in them, and we ask them, hey, would you be willing to be part of this team? And we lead this church together. I'm part of the lead team. I'm the only one who's on staff here at Discovery, the lead pastor. We pray for this church together, and they hold me accountable. I want you to know about our lead team is they are not my yes men or yes women. We lead together. And if you ever go to a church that's not Discovery, all right, I want to give you a 3-point checklist for you to help discern, is this the right church for me to go all in with? All right? And the first one is, do they teach the Bible from the Bible, and do they teach its relevance to today's world? Right? Like when you walk out of this place, do you say, I understand what the Bible's saying, and I understand what to do with it? That's a check. Good. Okay, 1. 2, do they teach that Jesus is the only way back to God? And if they do, check. If they don't, scratch it out. That's not the place for you. The third thing is, do they have an eldership? Do they have a lead team that holds the lead pastor accountable? And this is one that's going to take maybe a little bit of asking some questions. And you need to go talk to maybe one of the lead team members, the elders of that church, and ask them the questions like, what does this look like? What does your relationship with the senior leader, the lead pastor, look like? We offer this thing, Lunch with the Leaders, right after this service today. We're going to have some of the lead team who are there. There'd be a good chance for you even right there. Hey, talk to this person. Talk to a Derek. Talk to a Jody. Talk to a Christine. Find out what it is. How do you operate with Matthew, the lead pastor of the church? And I'm saying this as a warning to us because sometimes we have people who move out of the area and they have to find another church, or you're online right now. A lot of people online I know who don't even live in our area. And if you find a church you can connect to in your area, these are questions you need to ask. And there was a time when I was much younger and that I was very lured by success. As I said, I'm a driven individual. And if there was someone getting in my way of the change that needed to make, or whatever, I would plow right through. I don't care who I hurt. But something happens as you get older and wiser and have people around you who call things out of you that are like, hey, that's not good, or this is good. And you start to go, oh, there's a better way here that'll lead. And I'm 49 now. And I see myself as entering into the next half of ministry. And that next half of ministry isn't about success. It's about significance for me. And I want to help build people. I want to help open doors for people so that they can see how God wants to use them in even better ways, in greater ways than me. So I can really relate to the guy who we're going to talk about today in Luke 19, not because of his uber wealthy status, but because of the thing that God's going to teach him. Because one encounter with Jesus changes everything. His name was Zacchaeus. He says in verse 1, Jesus entered Jericho, was passing through, and a man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. A few weeks ago in this series, we were talking about another guy who was a tax collector. Do you remember this? His name was Matthew, also known as Levi. And Jesus comes along and says, Matthew, follow me. And Matthew follows him. And the first thing that Matthew does is he does what? Remember? He throws a what? He throws a party. He invites all his tax collector friends to come over, hang out, so that Jesus is the guest of honor. He wants his friends to meet Jesus at this party. And the religious leaders, the uber religious people, they are offended. They call Jesus a drunk and a glutton and someone who's a friend of sinners. And the Jewish people viewed the tax collectors as the worst of sinners, the scum of the earth. Reason being was they were collecting taxes from their fellow Jews, but they weren't giving the money to the nation of Israel. They were giving the money, paying the taxes to the Roman Empire, who was in power. And that party that Matthew threw, I doubt that Zacchaeus was there. He might have been invited, but he wouldn't show up to this because he wasn't just a tax collector. He was the chief tax collector. He was most likely Matthew's boss's boss. He's kind of a big deal. By the way, April 15th is Tuesday, everybody. Doesn't this is like, ugh. That just sinks your heart, doesn't it? And if this is a shock to you, extensions are good things, right? But we hate to pay taxes. But imagine paying your taxes to a government that's not yours. You're paying taxes to a government that actually took over yours. This is why the tax collectors were so hated. And Zacchaeus was the most hated because he had all these other tax collectors working under him. And so all this money is flowing up through them to him, and they were all skimming from the top. And so Zacchaeus is kind of like the godfather of this ring of extortion and violence and cheating and stealing. And this is the way he acquired his wealth. This guy has zero significance. Verse 3 says, he, Zacchaeus, wanted to see who Jesus was. Because he was short, he couldn't see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us why. Why does Zacchaeus want to see Jesus so badly? Because I don't know if you're like me or not, but have you ever thought this? You see a person, you know a person, maybe they're in your neighborhood, maybe they work with you, maybe they are in your family, and you go, they would never be interested in Jesus. You ever done that? Zacchaeus is one of those. Like, I don't know what's in his head or what is in his past or his background that made him want to see Jesus, but he was desperate to see him. But he couldn't because he was short. Now, archaeology teaches us a lot of things, and I was reading this week that burial records of skeletons in ancient Jewish cemeteries actually say that the average Jewish male was about 5'6" in these days. So let's put Zacchaeus maybe at the 5'2" range here. And he's trying so hard to fight through this crowd to get an image and could see who Jesus is. But guess where he's at? If you're in that crowd and you hate the tax collectors, especially this guy, and you see him coming and trying to sneak his way into the window between your body, what are you doing? You're going, no way. You can bully me in the IRS office, but you're in Gen Pop now, dude. And you might even take your kid and put him on the shoulders and stand in front of him and now how you got? What do you got? And so he runs and finds this sycamore fig tree. And I put a picture up here in the notes so you can see what it looks like. Because they have super low lying limbs and big leaves. So it's a great place to climb. Also a great place to hide. And while we know Zacchaeus wants to see Jesus, I'm going to bet that Zacchaeus didn't want Jesus to see him. And that might be someone in this room or online as well. You're like, I don't want people really to notice me. Because if they knew me, if they found out who I was, or they know who I am and what I do or what I've done. But if we do, we don't care. We do not care. Because like Zacchaeus, you are welcome here. Jesus accepts you, and we do too. So here's this guy in a Brooks Brothers suit, and he's gone out on a limb for Jesus. He's way beneath his dignity in a tree. And there are people in your life right now that you would assume have absolutely zero interest in Jesus, but they do. You take one look at him or one look at her, and there's no way you think they'd be interested in Jesus. And so we kind of mentally just cross them off the list. But that's not Jesus. If you were in the crowd that day, you might be shocked how interested Jesus was in Zacchaeus. He doesn't stop to talk to anybody else. Verse 5 says, when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So first off, Jesus knows his name. He calls him by name. Zacchaeus is in the limb. He's trying to hide, and Jesus just outs him right there. Zacchaeus, I see. Not only do I see you, I know you, and I like you. And I want to spend time with you. And I want you to feel that moment. Because Jesus knows you too. Discovery is just the right size of church for people to be able to hide. If you want to hide, you can hide. Or maybe you're watching online and that's your way of kind of hiding. And right now you're watching this and you're in your home or you're in the car, or you're on the treadmill. But Jesus sees you. He knows you. He's known you for a long time. The Bible says in Psalm 139 that he's known you since you were conceived, that he knit you together in your mother's womb. And he doesn't just love you. You're like, well, God, you got to kind of have to love me. Jesus loves me, this I know, or the Bible will tell me so. He likes you. He likes you, and he needs you. You're like, well, that's a step too far. How could Jesus ever need me? How would Jesus need Zacchaeus? Why would he need him? Well, let me fill you in on the timeline of when this meeting with Zacchaeus takes place. It took place on a Friday. And it was the Friday, and exactly a week from that meeting of Zacchaeus, in a week, Jesus will be hanging on a cross to die. He knows that his time is limited. He needs Zacchaeus because after he dies, he's going to send his followers to go into the world to tell others about him. And there are some people that guys like Peter and James and John will not have access to, that Zacchaeus does. Zacchaeus can get people in the room that the others don't have. As I was writing this week, I was thinking about a month ago, I was having dinner with some friends, my wife and I were having dinner, and I get a text in the middle of it from another friend of mine here at Discovery who's like, hey, Mehaffey, do you want to come over to this club that I'm a member of and hang out for a little bit? And I'm like, when you get this text, you go, let me think about it. Yes, I'm in. Because this is one of those clubs that, like, I don't have the success, let's say it this way, to the wealth to be in this kind of a club. But this guy does. He's like, hey, come on over. So I show up, and it's this guy, Matt, and his brother are there, and one other guy. Like, there's nobody else in this whole place. Just four of us kind of hanging out talking, and there's one guy who I don't know at all who's sitting there, and I kind of like to lay low in these kind of meetings, these kind of hangouts, because as soon as you say, I'm the pastor of a church, it changes the conversation, right? But my friend Matt, man, that's one of the things he really wanted his friend to know immediately. He's like, this is a pastor, this is my pastor. I'm like, dude, you totally outed me, you know? But this guy started saying, like, you know, asking me questions about the church and God, and this guy is like super successful in what he does. He's like buys up companies and sells companies and this kind of thing. I'm like, I don't even know what you do, you know, but this is a guy that as we began to talk, he started opening up a little bit more about his life and his struggles and things, and it opened up to a great conversation. Now, did I need to be in the room for that to all of a sudden happen? No, because you know who has access to that guy? My friend Matt, not me. And so I wonder, who do you have access to that God needs you to bring Christ to? Who are those people who are close to you but far from God, that if you know Jesus, you may be their only chance for them to meet him before it's too late? He needs to go to Zacchaeus' house. And verse 6 says, so he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. And all the people saw this and began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. That word mutter is a great one, isn't it? Because you know exactly how that sounds, don't you? I mean, that is laced, every word, with bitterness, right? And let me just tell you something about Discovery, everybody. We are in a season of growth right now. Things are happening. Things are, like the community, like people are, I'm meeting people all the time in the community, and, oh, you go to that church, or you that, or there's conversations, or people inviting, and we're seeing all these baptisms and life change and cool things that God is doing in people's lives, and it is so fun to be a part of those seasons. I've seen it in a few different times of my different ministries in Indiana, and Ohio, and now here. It's fun. It is so fun to see those things. But here's what happens and will happen and is happening. People, church people, other church people start to mutter. They start to mutter because what they're not seeing at their places is the same thing. They're not seeing it. And so they start thinking, oh, you know, this is one of the phrases they'd like to say. You know what they do over there at Discovery? They water down the gospel. That's one thing they'll say. They're not teaching Jesus over there. And like, well, actually, we're teaching Jesus every single moment that we can. And what happens is when you lift Jesus high, it draws people to him. Or others, I've heard this too. Oh, that's the church with the mini golf course. They're just luring people in with things like the mini golf course. I'm like, right. All right, that's what we're about, right? You'll hear that. I love this story. This week I heard about we have a group called the Senior Connect. We haven't had a lot of senior groups before in our church because we are such a young church, a lot of young families. But we do have a good number of seniors now in our church. And so this group kind of formed, and Jim Dykes, who's one of the leaders of it, took a stack of these cards and went bowling. And I guess there's a bunch of seniors who are kind of go to this bowling alley. And he just happened to take these cards and drop them in a lot of different places in the bowling alley. And they met last Wednesday, and there were people who just saw these cards and came to be a part of it. And I'm like, dude, that's great, because that's access to this place or these people that I wouldn't have access to, and God's using your influence to. And there are some people in your circle right now desperate to see Jesus. And they can't imagine that Jesus will want to see them, but you could be the bridge to the knowledge of the one who knows them. So Zacchaeus invites Jesus to his house in verse 8. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, Here and now, I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay them back 4 times the amount. That's an extraordinary response, isn't it? It changes everything in Zacchaeus' life, this encounter with Jesus. But why? Where did Zacchaeus come up with this number of 4 times the amount? Where did he get this? It actually comes from the Old Testament. The law of Moses in Exodus 22, verse 1, it says this: whoever steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it must pay it back 5 head of cattle for the ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. So let's dig into that a little bit deeper. Why did Zacchaeus choose 4 times and not 5 times? Oxes were 5, sheep were 4. Is he being just cheap? Choosing the lesser? No, because he just gave away half of his wealth to the poor. But he understands that the people who he has been cheating aren't to God oxes being led off to slaughter. They are to God. From God's perspective, he has been robbing sheep that belong to God. So Jesus helps Zacchaeus see people in a whole different light. They're not people I use to build my success, but I can use my career and what I have to help build people. You know, when we go after success, you use people to build your career. It doesn't matter who gets in your way. You might plow right through them to get what's yours. But when you're going after significance, you use your career to build people. Let's look at it this way. Success deceives us to think that we are God's over others, when significance helps us see others as God's. And here's the litmus test for you. If you want to know, am I more about success or am I more about significance? How you use your time and your talent and your treasure reveals if you really want significance in your life. Because your resources are tools. They're tools that build significance. I don't know if you were here last Sunday. I hope you were. If you didn't, if you weren't, if you didn't catch it online, I want you to go back and listen to Greg's story. Okay, he was right up here. I interviewed him. You can skip right through my message and go to the part where Greg is giving an interview. Because here is a guy whose God is using to be put in this situation where he's not looking at things as success, but how can I be a person of significance that God is giving me? And when this is who you are, it will change what you see, and it will change how you see others. So let's get super practical. You know, we talk about how do we take what's in God's word and put it into our life. Let's get super practical. How can we seek and save the lost? Because here is, Jesus gives us his purpose statement at the end of this text. And if we hear Jesus' purpose statement, we should probably lock in on it and know it. Because he says, this is what he says, that the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. That's it. That's his purpose statement. So what's yours? And we shouldn't overcomplicate this, although it's not easy. It's not complicated. It's when you refuse to miss an opportunity to speak Jesus to someone, even if you can't even imagine that they would be interested. So would you be a part of inviting people to be a part of what God is doing through our community? Because in exactly 1 week from today in this text, Zacchaeus will witness Jesus. And here. So here's the question for each and every one of us, and those of you online as well. What are you going to do in the next 7 days to prepare for the easiest invite for the year? And we're going to give you 2 opportunities. The first is our Good Friday experience on Thursday and Friday. This is a completely unique and immersive walkthrough where you're going to walk through different stations of Jesus' final hours as he goes to the cross. And we've designed this to be impactful for all ages. And if you go and sign up today, you're going to see this kind of a slide. And this is actually the early parts of Friday. They are almost all full. Matter of fact, I think they are all full now. So when you sign up, you're going to need to look for Thursday or late Friday. And you're going to gather your people. You're going to invite them. And we said last week, come to the experience and then go to dinner, grab drinks, whatever. And we're going to tee you up for some great conversations to have with your people. But then invite them to come back to our Easter weekend celebrations on Saturday and Sunday. We've added a whole new service to give many more options. We have one on Saturday at 5 p.m. and two on Sundays at 9 and 10:30. And here's the other thing. We all need to be ready for guests. This is how it is at Mehaffey House. When we have people over, every Mehaffey knows we have a job. We all have a job to do. And if Discovery is the church, you say, that's my church, you have a job to do as well, to be ready for guests. And I'm going to tell you what those are. First one is this: to be at services 15 minutes before it starts. And that doesn't mean pulling into the parking lot 15 minutes ahead of time, all right? It's to be in the room. If you've got kids, get them checked into the Discovery kids. If you've got middle school students, get them checked into Discovery students. And then if you've got a guest coming, you wait so when they come in the door, you're there to help greet them and showcase, get them where they need to be, because it's hard coming into a church for the first time. Here's the other thing: park in the back. Save the front spots for our guests so they can find an easy place to park. But you park around back and you come in the back door by the mini golf course, the back gate, the one that we're trying to lure people in with, all right? That's our goal, all right? Come in the back to be backdoor friends. You'll come in by the cafe, you'll be into the lobby. Save the parking. The next thing for all of us is as you come in this room, it's okay today, kind of, but don't be aisle seat people, right? That's a hard one, because on a plane, I'm an aisle seat person, but this isn't a plane. We're not going anywhere, right? But so scoot towards the middle of the sections and leaving empty seats on the end, so that when people come in late, which guests come in late a lot, because they're checking in kids, they didn't realize the process and this and that, getting their coffee, saving those aisle in seats for them to easily find a seat. The last thing is this: we're all creatures of habit. And I see it every Sunday, because I'm like, oh, yep, you sit there, you sit there, you sit there. I get it. And that's not a bad thing. Matter of fact, I want to encourage you to try to keep doing that. Because what you begin to do is you start looking around at your row and who's behind you and who's in front of you. And you start going, oh, wait, they're not usually in this row. I don't know that person. And that gives you the opportunity to kind of look over that person in your row and that person behind you. Go, hey, by the way, I'm Steve. I'm Alicia. What's your name? And you know what? That's so disarming, and that's so comfortable. You know what's not comfortable? I went to a church service a couple months ago. I went with some friends, and I like going to other church services. I like to learn what other people are doing, and it's healthy for me to walk into a room and not have a role. So I'm a first-time guest. That's hard every time, even for a pastor. Right? I get it. It's hard. And I'm sitting in my row, right? And I've been there for about a half an hour, and I'm surrounded by people who don't know me. No one has said a word. And then someone comes out on stage halfway through the service and goes, hey, everybody, would you stand up and go greet someone around you? In that moment, everybody gets up and turns towards me and other people and like, hi, good to meet you. What's your name? And as an introvert, oh my gosh, I wanted to crawl under my seat and hide, right? And just put a coat over my head or something. It was so awkward. You know also what it was? I just felt like this is so incredibly fake. This is so not authentic, because I've been here for a half an hour and nobody has said a word to me. But as soon as you get commanded to, you know I'm here, and you started talking to me, that just does not feel right. And I will never do that here at Discovery. So if you ever invite someone, know that that's not going to happen to them. I can't imagine Jesus on the middle of this parade route, and he sees Zacchaeus. He's like, hey, Zacchaeus, everybody greet Zacchaeus up here in this tree. So know where you sit. Kind of scope out, like, okay, and just have a real healthy introduction, one that's real, and show them who Discovery is, that we welcome you, whoever you are. So would you be willing to go out on a limb for someone who needs to see Jesus this week and adopt his purpose of seeking and saving the lost. It's who we are. So we're going to take communion. And this is a time that if you're a guest here, it might be kind of odd for you. You're like, what? Snack time? You know what? We pass out a piece of bread and a cup of juice because Jesus instituted this called the Last Supper, the Eucharist, communion. He came to seek and save the bread and this juice, this wine, he was saying, is going to be my body and my blood that's shed for you. I'm going to take your sins. I'm going to accomplish that seeking and saving the lost by what I'm going to do on the cross. So remember me when you take this. So we as a church just want to remember Jesus as often as possible. There's nothing special about the bread. There's nothing special about the juice that you're going to have in your hands. It's just Welch's or whatever and that bread, but it takes us to a place of remembrance of that important, critical sacrifice that changed everything for us. So let's take that at this time as the team passes the elements.